For this video, I will be doing a commentary on a one-on-one from NATS 2018, where the HMS Erin battled the IJN Kirishima. At the start of the video, the Erin is on the left and the Kirishima is on the right. I've been battling for over 10 years and would consider myself a fairly experienced battler. The idea of this video is to give some insight into what is happening during battle. I'm going to first talk about some general principles of battle while the video plays, and then play the video again to discuss specific moments during the battle. This is a one-on-one situation, so the way that the battle plays out is different. With larger fleet battles, captains are looking to take opportunistic attacks when someone else is distracted. But since there is only one other ship on the water, obviously that can't be the strategy here. But the principles do remain largely the same. The first thing you need to do is to analyze the strengths and the weaknesses of your ship as they compare to those of the enemy, so you can look to exploit any advantages that you have. First, mobility. In our hobby, speed is regulated by length. The Erin is slower at 28 seconds, but is smaller and is more maneuverable, so it should be able to turn tighter more rapidly and accelerate quicker than the Kirishima, which is faster at 24 seconds, but it will turn wider and slower and probably not accelerate quite as quickly. The advantage here goes to the Erin. In a one-on-one, since the faster Kirishima can't realistically use its speed to jump unsuspecting ships like it can in a fleet battle, and trying to chase down a single ship even by yourself, even if you're faster, is actually very challenging. And so the Erin can just keep turning away. The Kirishima, though, if it needs to get away for a period of time, can simply just run away in a straight line. Second is firepower. Both of these ships are 4.5 unit ships, so it might seem like the firepower should be equal. However, not all guns have the same level of potential damage, and where you place the guns on the ship is different and dependent on captain choice, with a few restrictions written into the rules. In our hobby, currently, above the waterline holes are worth 10 points, on the waterline are 20, and below the waterline are 30. It's important to keep in mind, though, that not only do below the waterline hits score more points, they are also more likely to do the type of damage to a ship which will sink it. So a gun that can score more consistently below the waterline is relatively more powerful. The Erin has a stern gun with 50 BBs, a stern side mount to port with 75 BBs, and a bow side mount to starboard with 50 BBs, which would be a very traditional setup for a ship like this. The Kirishima, on the other hand, has two separate stern side mounts with 50 BBs each, the sternmost to port and the more forward one to starboard. And it also has a bow side mount to port with 50 BBs. Because the ship was longer than 720 feet in real life, it is allowed to have 3 rather than 2 side firing guns, which the Erin has. But to really understand the concept of firepower, you have to understand how the relative power of each gun relates to both the ease of targeting with that gun and also exposure, which is how much of your own ship's target area you have to risk in order to get your gun on target. Essentially, all ships are the tallest in the bow, and the most target area is up there. In the stern, they sit lower, and since the back of the ship slopes to allow room for the propellers and rudders underneath the water, there's less total height of the hull in the stern. Additionally, ships are designed to drive forward, so the most control over the movement of a ship occurs when it's driving forward. As a result, most ships will have their relatively more powerful guns in the stern of the ship so that they can control the engagement with their mobility and the ability to disengage when they need to. And this also gives the enemy less target area to return fire. So in practice, a gun directly off the stern should be expected to be a low-risk, high-percentage gun, but does the lowest potential damage since it can really only reliably hit above the waterline. The stern side mount, or haymaker as we call it, is in general the most powerful gun in the hobby because it is typically the easiest gun to shoot consistently below the waterline shots with the least exposure of your own ship. The bow side mount is a higher risk gun that can be high reward since it does have the potential to shoot below the waterline shots, but it requires you to place your ship in a situation where you have less control over the engagement while exposing a larger part of the target area of your own ship. With all these things considered for this battle, I'd say the firepower is roughly a wash between these ships. The Erin's stern gun ideally should be able to fire all of the rounds with minimal risk, and the 75-round haymaker is a very powerful gun. The Kirishima has 2 50-round haymakers, but the placement of the guns on the ship means that it has to risk more of its target area to fire off the more forward one. The third consideration is defense, or survivability. Generally, larger ships have an advantage in damage-taking ability as they typically have more reserve buoyancy. Though smaller ships can be harder to hit because they have less target area. Additionally, the Kirishima is set up with 2 pumps, a full unit pump and a half unit pump, so it should have, on average, a greater pumping capacity in terms of gallons per minute. Also, however, the ability of a ship to pick a more favorable engagement can be thought of as a defensive advantage as well. The better mobility of the Erin in close quarters is important, but the overall speed of the Kirishima should allow the captain to just run away from the slower ship if it needs to. Overall, I'd favor the Kirishima in terms of survivability because more often than not, being able to just sit and take a punishment without sinking is an advantage. And since it does have 2 pumps, it should carry the advantage. But we should keep in mind that ships in a one-on-one scenario should have a hard time sinking each other in a single sortie. These ships carry 150 and 175 shots, and statistically only around 30% on average will end up making a hole. So if they are shooting with average or above average levels of accuracy, I would expect either ship to come away with roughly 50 to 70 holes at the worst case scenario. And those holes should be spread out between aboves and belows, which is a level of damage I would expect both of these ships to be able to survive. Lastly, and probably most importantly, success in the water has a lot to do with who built and who is battling the ship. There are some captains who are just better than others for a variety of reasons. Also, there are some ships that are built more reliably than others and can be expected to be less prone to mechanical or electrical failure. I know both of these ships and captains very well, and I'd say that in terms of reliability and skill, this is a pretty even matchup. So with all that being said, let's take a look at the video and talk about some specific points. Again, as we start the video, the Erin is on the left and the Kirishima is on the right. First off, I'd say that the starting position is a bit atypical. If I were in either ship, I'd want to start with my stern towards the other guy. That's a good pass by the Erin, moving to get in front of the Kirishima while staying out of range of the guns. The turn out and away here is perfect. It brings the stern gun on target, though one could argue that he should try to get into close range with the haymaker and try to get shots into the undefended bow on the starboard side of the Kirishima. Either way, he's in a good position where he's at and he's shooting for free without chance of return fire. The Kirishima here should just back away and get some space to turn around and put its stern towards the enemy. Shooting while directly parallel will not work. The BBs at a high angle will not go in. The trajectory of the shots need to be more flush with the side of the ship. This is good. The Erin backs him down, but the Kirishima gets a slight jump. Neither captain, rightfully so, wants to trade it out this early in the battle, so they disengage. Those were good stern gun shots. The Kirishima's return fire isn't effective. Those would not have made holes. They are stern to stern here, which is what I would expect both captains to try to be doing, though the Kirishima backs up too far and allows the Erin to once again gain a positional advantage where he could shoot the stern guns to the bow, or he could try to get his stern side mount into the starboard bow. The Erin doesn't use the advantage here and instead backs alongside the Kirishima, where they both trade their higher risk bow side mounts. The Erin uses its better mobility to micromanage the range better than the Kirishima, but a lot of those fired will end up having gone under the ship and not making holes. They were just a little too far away. It's not ideal, but sometimes you just have to find yourself in the middle of a mistake and make the best of it. The Kirishima could have thought about trying to close a distance and get the stirred side mount on target, but it probably would have taken some damage to do so. Here the Erin makes a bit of a mistake by allowing the Kirishima to close range with its best gun. They sort of traded out for a bit with the best gun of each ship trading 1 for 1. That's not usually a good idea unless you are very sure that your ship can take a pounding better than the other. It is a crowd pleaser though. The Erin is outpositioned and takes a few shots here, but the Kirishima wastes the last several into the water. Sometimes it's hard to control your nerves when you're in battle. Now the Erin makes a good play. The stern side mount trading with the bow side mount 1 for 1 should favor the Erin. So after they readjust position here, I'd be thinking that the Erin's 75 round gun probably has more shots left than the 50 round gun of the Kirishima, so trading would again favor the Erin, though as it turns out both guns are empty. Erin has to be a little careful about giving Kirishima free shots, but correctly does turn away from the gun and gives the last few stern gun shots out of his own ship. The Erin hesitates and he's not really sure which way to go, but then he makes a good play. The Kirishima has no guns directly to the stern, so it's safe to turn broadside to the stern of the ship as long as you're careful about not receiving a ram. The Erin makes a good positional change here. You can see how much more mobile it is again. The bow side mount should be able to fire on the bow as long as it's careful not to get caught up with the stern haymaker of the Kirishima. If I were in the Kirishima, I'd be trying to be the aggressor here, since we know that the most dangerous part of the Erin, both guns in the stern, are completely out of BBs. The Erin does a good pivot maneuver here to keep the Kirishima's bow gun off target. The first few were again not good shots by the Kirishima, but he realizes this and holds fire. The Erin then does get caught for a few at the end of this. I might have kept trying to pivot away if I were in the Erin. Now here the Kirishima realizes that he's in trouble and he forgot to turn his second pump on, but it's too late. I'd point out that the Kirishima settles very level in the water, which is a good thing. This increases the damage-taking ability of the ship. It can hold on and sink more slowly and more steadily rather than rolling over. And we all cheer because we like sinks. But it is a bit deceptive. It turns out that the bump the Erin gave the Kirishima to stay clear of the bow gun actually caused a significant ram damage, which makes the Kirishima sink, rather than the actual combat damage that it received. Ramming is not allowed in our hobby, and technically the Kirishima should have called ram and would have been able to repair the damage and return to the water while the Erin waits for it. But the nature of the way we play is such that there is so often a lot of contact that you can't call every single bump and check for ram damage. In fact, this one seemed fairly incidental at the time, and most battlers would have thought nothing of it. Even the battlers that were standing on the shore were surprised to see the ram damage when the ship was pulled out of the water. Bad luck for the Kirishima. So since the ram wasn't called, this is considered a combat sink and the Erin wins. You can really get a sense of the advantages a smaller ship might have in terms of mobility. At the end of the day though, the shots have to be on target. The nice thing about a one-on-one is that you know how well you are shooting, whereas in a large fleet battle you could potentially shoot 0% and not really ever know about it. After the battle, the damage was counted. The Erin had 31 above, 12 on, and 15 below, 58 total holes. The Kirishima had 26 above, 1 on, and 6 below, 33 total holes. This is fairly close to the amount of damage that I would have predicted before the battle even started, just knowing how many total shots each ship had to fire. So without the ram and subsequent sink, the Kirishima really would have won. I'd interpret the points result as the Erin shooting effective with the stern gun, as there were a lot of above holes in the Kirishima, but most of its side mount shots were not really ranged correctly. Probably what happened was the ship was positioned too far away from the Kirishima when he was firing. The Kirishima, on the other hand, did a better job of getting the side mount ranged correctly. In the end, I'm pretty sure both of these guys had fun and it made the onlookers cheer, so that's really about all you can ask for. I'm not trying to be too hard on either one of these guys. I've received their permission to review this battle. They're both friends of mine and have fun battling even if they don't win the day, which is really what this hobby's all about. This commentary will hopefully serve as some insight into how I generally tend to approach trying to be an effective captain on the water and how I would approach the micromanagement of a ship in battle. Thanks for watching.